Before you win a game, you can't lose it. Wise words from Matt Rhule. What does that mean?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
All right, welcome. It's Tuesday here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Connor Hepper, Mitch Sherman with you. Matt Rhule speaking on Monday at his press conference, a variety of different topics that were engaged upon, including travel, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the show today. But not just like, oh, it's hard to travel. You know, the one thing he said about it at the beginning was we're not going to complain about it. There's some pretty good and interesting, intricate details about the things that they do and the precautions that they take on the road. So we'll get to that later on in the show today. But we start with a clip from Matt Rhule that turns into, I don't know, kind of an overarching, like, here's where we're at in the program type of question or type of thing, Mitch, as you know, they're a program that, you know, they have some weaknesses, they have some strengths. It's a constant process of trying to evaluate those things. And so it becomes about matchups in these games. And, you know, Matt Rhule getting into a little bit yesterday of where they're at in that process right now.
Yeah, there's I think a way to take that whole matchup conversation out of the spotlight. And the way to do that is to win in the margins, in the areas where you're not necessarily looking at the matchups. And these are areas that Nebraska has failed miserably in for the majority of the past decade. Look at some of these numbers right now where Nebraska ranks. Punt return yardage per game, 4th in the country. Punt return yardage allowed per game, 5th in the country. Opponent kickoff return yardage per return, 16th nationally. Penalty yardage per game, 22nd nationally. That's 22nd on the low end. Turnover margin, 8th nationally. So you don't need us to tell you that these are areas that have been problematic for Nebraska. And if you are not in the top, let's say, third or quadrant of the Big Ten, then you have to rely on these areas because the matchups are not always going to go in your favor. Nebraska is going to end up in games where not just like the player versus player matchup, but the scheme matchup, like Nebraska saw against Cincinnati, which was a little bit troubling for the Huskers with the way that Cincinnati played defense and the way that Cincinnati's quarterback ran. Against Michigan, clearly the matchup favored Michigan. The things that Michigan was good at, Nebraska was not good at. And you saw that play out in the game. And some of the reason that game was close, was, yes, because Nebraska completed a Hail Mary at the end of the first half, but it also had things go against it, like a receiver step out of bounds in the back of the end zone. So part of the reason that game was close is because Nebraska was able to do well, or at least be even in some of these areas that are in the margins. So on Monday, Matt Rhule was talking about culture and some of the leaders in the program and things that they were doing in the locker room, mentioning Marquise Buford quite a bit because Buford has been supplanted by a redshirt freshman at his safety spot. At least he was in the last, game and a half against Michigan, half the game against Michigan, the full game against Michigan State. Rex Guthrie is getting the majority of those reps. And Rhule says, hey, Buford looks more like a captain, acts more like a captain than any player that I've been around in several years, or as much as any player that I've been around in several years. And that feeds into the culture that he's trying to build. So I asked him about culture and how these areas in the margins also play into the culture that he's trying to build. And here is Matt Rhule's answer.
I think, before you win a game, you can't lose it. Like, don't give the game away. Like, don't beat ourselves, right? Like, and so, I think when you're like there's to me there's three stages of winning, right? There's eliminating losing football, right? That's the first year we were minus 16 or whatever we were in turnovers. It's going to be no matter what we wear, no matter what music we listen to before the game, it doesn't matter if you're minus 16. Then you start playing winning football. Then you start trying to play championship football, and turnover margin, all those things they start to, because it's one thing to not give the ball away, which we're doing a pretty good job, but we're taking the ball away. That's jumping up, which that's about playmakers. That's about the way you're playing. So I think it's discipline. I think it's when guys all understand, like, hey, before I can make a play, I first have to do my job. But then after I do my job, I have to go make a play. That's the hardest thing in football now. Like Bill Belichick said, do your job. And coaches say, do your job. And then when the game's on the line, they say, no, go make a play. And kids are like, do I do my job or do I make a play? Well, we try to clearly define it as like, hey, do your responsibility and then run over there and hunt and go make a play. And so I think our guys are getting that. It takes a while to get that. But yeah, we're proud of those stats. We're proud of being in the tops in the country at throwing the ball. We're proud of being in the tops in the country at stopping the pass. Some areas we have to improve upon. We know that. But I do think the hidden ones are the penalties, the special teams, the turnover margin. The thing with those things, though, is they don't carry over. And that's the biggest, I would rather be +1 every game in the turnover margin than be +6 on the year. Like, I just want to win it every game because that gives you a chance.
How do you think Iowa's won all these games over the years? It's funny because
it's dawning on Nebraska at this point. Look, that's how they've done it.
100%. It's funny because I think initially when Rhule got here, there was this sort of attitude of like, at least this is the vibe that I got from him, that they were going to create like their own kind of version of Iowa. And I think people took that to mean, they're gonna run the ball and they're gonna slow things down. They're gonna play incredible defense and all these things. And of course they want those to be tenets of their program. But look at the way that this team is built right now. It's sort of the scale is more speed and things on the outside and playmakers, and your weaknesses might be in the middle of the field, but you have those tenets of the Iowa teams. You have those tenets of really successful football teams where you're good at special teams. You're making plays on special teams now, and you're killing it in the turnover margin. You're not turning the ball over very much at all, and you're getting some on defense. Like that's it's so maybe people are sort of weirded out by the way it looks right now, meaning they're not great up front on either side of the ball. But like they're doing all the Big Ten things, and maybe people just have to sort of see it that way a little bit.
Or some of the Big Ten things. It's funny. That's a great point you bring up about Iowa, because in some ways, the game that we watched on Saturday at Memorial Stadium was a classic Iowa game. Disgusting offense for just an extended period of time, and then you lean on your opponent and you inevitably make a play on defense or special teams, and it just kind of opens up the floodgates, and then it happens. Now, the 38-27 score, maybe not in line so much with the way that we've seen Iowa win games ugly. It's usually 13-10 or 20-17, but some of the methodology in the way that Nebraska got there was very reminiscent of a Kirk Ferentz team.
No doubt about it.
I don't know if that's the reason that, like, all of us, and I'm including myself in this conversation too, I'm not like casting aspersions on Nebraska fans who said, how could you not enjoy that? Like I was right with you for, I think you were too, Connor. Like for much of that game, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like what was I believing in with this Nebraska team? And it's like, oh wait, they're up 17 points with 4 minutes to go.
Yeah. I think people sometimes, there's also an element of like, not every game is going to be perfect. And so there's that too, but also like we've heard Matt Rhule sort of give that spiel a little bit, probably 4, 5, 6 times throughout his Nebraska tenure so far, of like the stages of winning. Right. And I wonder if you really asked him, if you really pinned him down, like where he thinks they're at in the stages right now, because what he didn't say, but what it felt like he was almost about to say is, they're getting pretty close to championship football. And I know that is like scary for people to hear, especially considering what you just said, Mitch, the second and third quarter of the game on Saturday were like a disaster. That wasn't championship football, but that's not what he's talking about. Like, he's talking about going out and making plays that win games. And that's exactly what Nebraska did. And that's what they did in the Cincinnati game as well. And that's what they'll have to do for the next 30 games, in this little stretch that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think they're getting pretty close to winning football. They're getting pretty close to like consistent winning football. I wonder, like, if you're listening to the podcast right now and because I had this reaction, like when I heard you say that, like, Rhule thinks they're getting pretty close to championship football. Did you? It kind of set me back a little bit. Like, oh, I don't know, like championship football.
I think he thinks they're at winning football. Like they're at winning
they
football.
Are.
And what he means by championship football is making extra plays and getting takeaways and stuff like that.
That part of it, yeah. It has to be paired with better line play.
Yeah.
Just better line play. Like it's as simple as that. And comb back over the last two games. Nebraska's defensive line, we'll talk about the defense in the third segment today, but the defensive line did take a step forward on Saturday against Michigan State. Offensive line, like, still very much up for debate, but yeah, it's coming to some degree. Some parts of it are, and one area where it really has shown the kind of improvement that you would want this year are in special teams, penalties, knock on wood, because we're just 5 games in, and the turnovers. You remember a year ago, the turnover margin was great in the first half of the season. And, Matt Rhule said some pretty interesting stuff in the offseason ahead of 2024. Like, if we go minus 17 in turnovers again this year, talking about his second year, I'm going to be looking for a job in December. And we were all kind of like, whoa, that's maybe you don't want to go that far down the road, Matt. But they were much better in the first half of the season. And in the second half of the season, it really wasn't a whole lot better than what we saw in 2023. They started giving the ball away more. So the expectation this year is that this is a team that can play like that in the turnover area all year. But we're getting far enough into the season, I think, after this week, when you're at the halfway point, you can really stand back and try to gauge it. Is this going to be something that carries on through an entire 12 or 13 game season?
-2 last year, which was 71st in the country. So I
think they were +6 at the halfway point. So they went -8 in the second half. Like, that's pretty much over an extent. That's the way they played in 2023. They have to avoid that kind of a drop off, and having a more experienced quarterback, an offense that has an idea about what it wants to do, all of that should help.
And some special teams that are really working for him right now, as you mentioned before. All right, we'll take a break. This is a nerd segment, I think, for people who are into the intricate details and like logistics of what it takes to travel a college football team and how much Matt Rhule seriously cares about every little detail. Back after this.
Right now, a moment to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add excitement to your football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like next week in the NFL or this week in the NFL. Josh Allen's passing yards, Saquon Barkley's rushing yards. Is he rushing for a touchdown? If you pick more or less and you get it right, you are in the game. I like how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineup with one click. Yes, you can just copy their lineup over to your lineup and make the same picks. They have an injury reboot feature. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it will not count against you. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. Tuesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast, making our way towards Saturday, Nebraska at Maryland, 2:30 Central Time. Lots of talk on Monday since this is Nebraska's first real road trip of the season. Huskers went to Kansas City, of course, to open the year, and there was every aspect of a road game as far as what Matt Rhule's talking about here that was involved in that. They actually bussed to Kansas City, so it was a longer trip than what you might find if Nebraska's flying to, say, Wisconsin or Iowa or Illinois. But the atmosphere inside Arrowhead Stadium was not a road game. It remains to be seen what the atmosphere is going to be like at Maryland this Saturday.
Yeah, I said yesterday on my show, like, yeah, I described it as this will be the first time this year where, you're the opposing fans outnumber the Nebraska fans. And then I like sort of paused for a second. I think, maybe. But yeah, I think there'll be more Maryland fans than Nebraska fans. But, Nebraska alumni are always out there and people travel. So there'll be still a
lot of Nebraska alums in the DC to New York corridor, Northern Virginia, all of that area. And they've shown up when Nebraska's played in College Park as a Big Ten member. I think Maryland, there was a lot of enthusiasm last week for Maryland as it came home after the Wisconsin win in the bye, and then got out to a 20-0 lead against Washington, and then the Terps gave it away. So it'll be interesting to see if that carries over now that they have a loss in the Big Ten, or if Maryland fans just go, okay, same old story. We had a great September. See you next year. That could also happen.
Season,
Yeah, right. So Matt Rhule could talk about this stuff all day. The logistics, the details, the things that Nebraska can control. And there's a lot of controllables when you're Nebraska and you go on the road. They are leaving Lincoln not on Friday, which is normal for a Saturday game, but instead on Thursday. So it's a longer trip, maybe a 3-hour flight from Lincoln straight to BWI, Baltimore Washington International. The Huskers are flying in on the north side of the DC metro area because they'll make their headquarters on late Thursday into Friday and Saturday morning in Bethesda, Maryland, which is just not a long bus ride to College Park, but it's not like driving from the Cornhusker Marriott to Memorial Stadium. So Rhule told a story on Monday about his time at Temple, and this is him illustrating how much he cares about all of the little things in travel. This was in 2014. Temple was playing UConn, Rhule's second year as the coach of the Owls, and they would normally fly from Philly to UConn, but he wanted a new kind of helmet for his team that season. So he made a deal with Pat Kraft, the AD at Temple then. Incidentally, the AD at Penn State right now, in case anyone is interested. And the deal was, Kraft will get them the new helmet. The athletic department will pay for his team to have new helmets if they take a bus to UConn instead of flying to save the program some money. So the bus ride, not surprisingly, hit traffic on the route from Philly to Connecticut. Instead of like just under 4 hours, it took 6.5 hours to get there, Rhule said. And he still remembers this, like minute by minute, 11 years later. He was not happy. So even sometimes when you're Matt Rhule and you work tirelessly to control all of the controllables, it turns out that you can't. It's easier at Nebraska. Would you say?
I would, because he doesn't have to make any back alley deals with the athletic director about what he gets for him. They're bringing their own chefs. They got people going out in advance to eat the food and check in on the hotel and things like that. Like Nebraska has,
drive all the routes.
Yeah, whatever Matt Rhule, wants them to check on, and he is he could run like a logistics, company. He's super detail oriented and thinks about all of these things. And now he has people to do it for him, but he could say, hey, I've experienced this before. Check this out, whatever it might be. And I want to make sure all the players, have the best experience possible, but are also the most ready to play a game as well. I think you could probably at times take it too far. Like, it's
you need to be self-aware and
it's 18 to 22-year-old kids. Like they're going to be okay. You don't have to You know, you don't have to close them off too much to the world when you're on the road, or you don't have to, you know, whatever. They'll survive. But Matt Rhule would never forgive himself if he didn't put his team in the best position to win, and they have the resources to do so. So they're going to do everything. They're going to pull out all the stops.
After that bus ride that was 2.5 hours too long to UConn, Temple won the game 36-10. So, you know, as Rhule pointed out, like, just because he's upset and something goes off the rails, in the end, it probably doesn't matter that much. And that's the thing that he realizes he has to be careful about. Like, if he gets too bent out of shape because the bus ride was too long, or he mentioned next week because the game in Minneapolis was changed from Saturday to Friday, Nebraska had to change its team hotel. And now they're staying apparently
by the Mall of
at
America.
a hotel connected to the Mall of America.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm not complaining about that. But actually, I am complaining about it right here, right now, in front of like 50 TV cameras. So just so you know, I don't really like the fact that we had to change our hotel.
He doesn't like the fact that they had to change the hotel because he's worried that like the players will go out and walk too much in the Mall of America, which is this grand, spacious, you know, thing or whatever it might be. Not that it's funny, not that they would like spend $5,000 or something.
What is the Mall of America?
In the Mall of America,
Sorry.
but that they would walk too much or eat bad food or whatever it might be. So it's first world problems. I think everything will work out all right.
Sorry, I had a flashback to someone who recently did not know what the Mall of America was, but
yeah, weird
anyway,
people. There's weird people out there, Mitch.
All right, here's Rhule talking about those controllables and how he handles all of this on a road trip.
The way we travel here, what's allowed, what we're allowed to do, like, you know, just in terms of the resources we have available to us is elite. I mean, what Kristen does, like, I don't have to even think about the meals. Like, we actually take our own chefs from the training table, and they show up there and like they make our omelets for us. They make our, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing showing up and like, oh, I don't eat this, I don't eat that. Like, some of our guys, we have a couple guys with really restrictive gluten allergies and all that. Like, it's all, she goes a day ahead. She makes sure everything's perfect. So I do feel like the food is important, right? Because, I mean, if you get there and all of a sudden you eat something you don't like, and so, but Kristen does such an amazing job with that. You know, we always go see a movie the night before the game, and so we've seen some horrific movies. So I've just given up on that. But no, I think it's that. Like, you know, and I just don't love the long bus ride on the day of the game. But I've also learned that none of that really matters. You know what I mean? Like, you like it to be seamless and clean, but you're going to kick the ball off. It's about who blocks and tackles. So just trying to keep it that. And I think the last thing is just the players, right? The players, they can't, you know, we had to change our hotel in Minnesota because they moved the game from Saturday to Friday. I'm not complaining, but that's a subtle little complaint that they had to change the hotel. And like now it's attached to a mall. Like, you have to ask the players then, hey, be focused. Like, don't go there and, you know, go walk around the mall for 3 hours and have your legs be tired. So I think having a really good group, like our strength coach, Corey, I think they do a good job of just making sure there's no distractions. If I had to say one thing, it's probably no distractions. But I love going on the road. I think I said that to you guys before, though. I love the feeling of just being in the hotel with the guys for, you know, 24 hours, kind of like sequestered. And now we travel so well that, like, it feels like you're at the Cornhusker Marriott when you're away because there's so many Husker fans there, which is really cool.
Yeah, I like how we continue to find jobs that Matt Rhule could do other than coach football that he would be really good at. Like, he could be a broadcaster. He could run a logistics company. So he is probably about as good as there is out there among coaches in the Power Four at things like logistics, media, building a support staff, relationships, getting himself involved in the community.
Most coaches don't care. Most coaches don't care. They hire people to care, you know, but most coaches are just like, whatever. It's better when you have a directive straight from the top, and a guy who is, you know, this is part of being the CEO of a college football program. It's not just knowing how to block and tackle and teach blocking and tackling. It's also knowing how to, you know, what to do when somebody comes to you and says you have to change your hotel from Saturday to Friday in Minneapolis or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
I mean, he's at the top at all of this stuff. And the one thing with Matt Rhule, and this kind of gets to the heart of how we'll end this conversation, that we don't necessarily know in 2 years and 5 games of experience is he at the top? Can he get himself to the top on the things that are required of a head coach on game day, like in the 60 minutes of football? And I don't mean like there was some conversation on social media Monday when people were discussing Matt Rhule's obsession with the details in travel, and someone said, "Now, if he could just coach the run defense, it would be great." And it's like, no, Matt Rhule's job, yeah, his job is to do everything, is to oversee everything, but it's not to coach the run defense during the game. He has a defensive coordinator and assistant coaches for that, and he hires them. He's responsible for it for sure. But I'm talking about like what we want to know about Matt Rhule and what's probably going to make the difference as to whether he gets this thing to a place where Nebraska can win 8 or 9 games a year, or he gets it to a place where Nebraska can make the college football playoff multiple times, contend for a national championship, is can he be as good at the head coach stuff during 4 quarters of football as he is at everything else for 12 months out of the year, 6 days a week, all the stuff, 7 days a week, all the stuff that happens outside of those 60 minutes. If he's got the game management, the decisions in the moment, in the heat of battle on the same level as all the other stuff, then there's really no reason. There's no reason why Nebraska won't be at some point in his time contending for the types of things that Nebraska fans have been dreaming about for the last 25 years.
Yep. We'll see in due time. That's TBD at this moment. When we come back, Matt Rhule has praise for a guy who we haven't heard much from this year, and there's a reason for that after this.
All right, a message from Game Time, because college football is here, and we could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it, but let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle at times than the games themselves. You've got endless queues to navigate, hidden fees that frustrates you, prices jumping at checkout. That's never fun. That's why we use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices on college football and all sports with no surprise fee. What you see is what you pay. The app makes it simple to just check out the views right there from your seats. Take advantage of the zone deals. What happens there is you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, you save the money. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today.
And a word from our friends from Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, as you know them all, whether it be on game day or Monday through Friday throughout the week. These are the places that bring people together. Local spots in every neighborhood come alive during football season. Everyone's in their team colors. The energy is excellent. And it feels like the entire block is sharing together. So that's what Square is all about bringing neighborhoods together. Chances are if you go into a business today to get some food, to get some coffee, whatever it might be, they're going to be using Square, especially the local ones. So support those businesses, support local, and of course, remember Square, a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. All right. Welcome back. Connor Hepper, Mitch Sherman with you here on this Tuesday. Matt Rhule talking a little bit about Sierra Wright yesterday, which I thought it's good because, it's a guy we don't hear much from. And like I said, when I teased it a little bit, there's a reason we don't hear much from him because they don't really try him much anymore. Sierra Wright is guarding at an elite level. And, one of the things that you may have noticed during the game, everyone may have noticed during the game, there was some overthrows on balls down the field, the wind aided, whatever it might be by Aiden Childs. But look at the coverage on those plays that Sierra Wright, guys like Sierra Wright and Andrew Marshall were applying. We're thinking about Nebraska's pass defense and is it the best in the country? Is it actually the best in the country? They're the best team against the pass in the country. Well, it's starting to get closer and closer to the truth with more sample size and watching the way that those guys operate on the perimeter, whether it be Wright. Wright was in the slot quite a bit on Saturday with Jones on the edge, but man, those guys are really, really showing up.
We haven't really had to have these kind of conversations or thoughts much, unfortunately, about Nebraska football recently. But I would say that Sierra Wright should be getting consideration. It's midseason, but he should be getting consideration for honors like All Big Ten. And even now, he probably needs like a splash play or two. He had the pick 6 last year at USC. Like he's got to do something to get himself noticed, to become like an All-American candidate. But he's not far off. Like if you watch the games, you don't see players catching balls against Sierra Wright, and it's not like he's gone against a bunch of scrubs at receiver or at quarterback. Now, this Saturday is going to be another test on the road in a semi-hostile environment, and Malik Washington is just flat as talented of a thrower as I think Nebraska has seen this year. The other top quarterbacks that Nebraska's seen, and it's been a talented list, but the others, at least when they faced Nebraska, Sorsby there was something off about him that day. I will give a lot of credit to Nebraska for shutting him down, but something about it being the season opener, I'm not sure. He's been much better for the rest of the season. Was it all Nebraska? I don't think so. I think like he had a bunch of new receivers that he was trying to connect with. Like if they played Cincinnati again, I wouldn't expect Nebraska to hold Brendan Sorsby to under 100 yards, but they did on that day. And I think Washington from Maryland, Malik Washington is going to present as big of a test for Sierra Wright, for Andrew Marshall, for Donovan Jones, as they've seen this season. Those three, this was something that we harped on through the offseason. Like one of the areas where Nebraska had to get better, and we thought Nebraska would get better, was the ability to play man-to-man defense. That's what allows you, in theory, to be able to rush the passer, to stop the run. And with that part of it, they're succeeding. Like I thought Marshall had a little bit of a dip at some point in September, but he came back with a very good game also on Saturday against Michigan State.
Yeah, I think as we start to think about this game a little bit, there's a couple we talked about matchups right there at the top of the show. Like that's what these games are going to be about. How does it look for you just in terms of personnel or strengths and weaknesses either side of the ball? Like there's a couple interesting ones for both defenses. I think Malik Washington, they don't run the ball. Maryland doesn't on offense, so they're going to throw it around a lot. And I frankly trust Nebraska's corners and defensive backs to cover and have a plan that is in place for that. Like you said, it'll be a tough test for them. And then for Maryland defensively and Nebraska offensively, they rush the passer really well, and Nebraska has not handled that well. So it's a cat and mouse game. It's a chess game, and minimizing your weaknesses and accentuating your strengths. Your strengths have to be strengths, and you have to win the weaknesses too. So it's a fascinating one from a matchup perspective Saturday.
So we're looking at like a 14-13 game since the defense. I don't think so, but
it could be. I mean, but you look at the quarterbacks and you're like, oh, they like to throw it around and they're pretty good at it. But if it plays out that way, if Nebraska's defense shows again like they have, pass defense shows again like they have, and Maryland's rushing the passer effect shows as it has again. I mean, it could be dicey for both sides. That's for sure.
A big important player in this game, because if you give Washington all day to throw, I don't care how good your corners are in man-to-man coverage. He's with the receivers that he has, they're going to find ways to get open. Like you can't just cover forever. Right? That's an unrealistic expectation for any secondary. And Nebraska did ramp up the pass rush last week because of a couple of guys, notably Deshaun McCullough. And then the one that let's talk about for a second is Williams Winery, because he just continues to blow me away with the fact that he is so ready to play right now. We talked about him throughout the summer months, and I truly thought in August, with what I saw and what I was hearing out of camp, that he was a year away, that he would get some reps this year. He'd be a third down pass rush specialist. He'd probably have a couple of sacks, like a James Williams kind of player from the last couple of years for Nebraska. But you wouldn't be thinking about him being like an award recipient or anything like that. And it's been not that. Like, he played 70 snaps, basically the whole game on defense for Nebraska last week against Michigan State, and he won a lot of battles. Like, he's leading the team in pressures. I believe he's leading the team in sacks. He had a couple more against Aiden Childs. So you're not seeing him get into the backfield and miss. Like, this is a guy who's looking like the 5-star prospect that he was coming out of high school as he went to Missouri. Like, I don't know that he's consistent enough yet to say, like, all right, this is, put him on the radar for all Big Ten, but it might not be too far down the road before those kind of conversations happen.
They need all the help they can get with that position in particular. And he's been pretty good this year. Rhule said yesterday, the one thing, about him that they told him right up front was like motor, just keep going. And clearly he's found that. I mean, that pops immediately. Like, we know he's talented, but it really does look like he's playing hard, and he has the motor to go along with it, and chasing after balls and late on gang tackles and stuff like that. So yeah, kudos should go out to him. He's doing a nice job so far.
Hey, congrats to two Huskers. As we finish this podcast, Deshaun Singleton on Monday was named Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week for his 2 picks. Almost had a touchdown as well on a scoop and score, but that was negated because it was ruled a forward pass. But still, big week for Deshaun Singleton, leader back there in the secondary. If you missed Matt Rhule's little interview, Matt Rhule's feature story on Deshaun Singleton during his podcast last week, check that out. It's a great, maybe great isn't the right word, but it's poignant. The story of Deshaun Singleton and his brother DJ, who is also a member of the Nebraska football team. I'll leave it at that. You go check out the house rules to hear about that. And then another Big Ten Player of the Week, Bergen Riley. We haven't talked any volleyball since before Nebraska went to Penn State last week. So finish up here. She was named the Big Ten Setter of the Week, and Nebraska obliterated Penn State, and then Rutgers, maybe less of a surprise on Saturday, but the Penn State match on Friday night, which was a Fox match in their Fox primetime Friday night, they had to fill like 40 minutes of air after the match ended because they blocked off 2 hours, and it was over in an hour 17. Penn State was held to 6 points in the first set. So, like, legitimately one of the worst matches in the history of Penn State volleyball that Nebraska induced going out to Happy Valley. So Bergen Riley, Big Ten Setter of the Week.
Yeah, I was doing a high school football game at the time, and I was like, "Excuse me, 25-6." Pretty unbelievable. So
the next 2 sets weren't much closer. None of the sets that Nebraska played last weekend in their first Big Ten road trip did the opponent get to 20 points.
All right, it's another big moment for Locked On. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, where they have you covered each Thursday throughout the college football season. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV.